intro, my outro, and that's where I began. That was 5 years ago. Today, the Israel Daily News has employees. We have a website. We run a podcast that comes out twice a week, once at the beginning of the week, once at the end of the week, and a weekly newsletter, active social media channels. Our social media channel just hit 40,000 followers on Instagram. And what I'm doing is I'm giving a briefing of what's going on in Israel. So I'm going through all of the news, I'm getting through all the channels, and I'm coming down, boiling it down to the top 5 stories that an international audience should know. I don't include my perspective or my opinion, and I give out the news, and this has worked incredibly well for our listeners. On the evening of June 15th, we in Israel were at war with Iran. I had been living in Israel for 7 years at this point. I had covered so many incredible stories, especially between 2018 and 2020, the Abraham Accords, where miraculously, after decades, Israel made peace with its neighbors. I mean, this was incredible to have so many Arab nations sign on to say that they wanted to normalize with Israel. I felt that I was living in historic times. I felt very energized about the country. Things were going well. Tech was booming. Negotiations were underway. And we get to October 7th. On October 7th, I was in Israel, and it was Simchat Torah. We were all going out to pray, and meanwhile, so much was happening in the south of Israel. I just went to the New York premiere of One Day in October, which is a series about 7 different stories from October 7th. I really felt that it was very intense. It was hard for me to watch, but it was really powerful, and I recommend because it's a very high production. It's a very high production TV series, and you'll get a little taste of what happened on that day that affected us, not only in Israel, but around the world for Jews and non-Jews, by the way. I think it's so important for me to mention that I've received so much support from listeners in the Christian community, in the Muslim community. So often we here in the Jewish community feel that nobody stands with us, or that we are the only ones who can support one another, and my experience has just only proven me otherwise. So we are in this war, I'm covering this war. I went from doing an Israel Daily News that was supposed to be a 12 to 15 minute update daily. After about 6 to 8 months, I started to need to drop down, because every day of those first 6 months of war was such intense news coverage that each 12-minute episode needed to be 40 minutes. Each breakdown, I did not sleep for months. I did not sleep for months because with the time difference, I was producing a podcast, and before and after the podcast, I was appearing on TV news networks around the globe that were asking me to come in, do commentary, give updates, and so the coverage was just wall to wall. On June 15th, we were already a few days into war with Iran. And this was sort of the big bad wolf. Now, one thing that I want to highlight is that I don't know any nation around the world that has people that are so clued in that you could send everybody an alert at 4 o'clock in the morning, and every single individual in that nation knows what's going on. What was the alert? I joke about this with my friends. Wake up, we did the thing. We struck Iran. Everybody got up. Every single person in the country knew what was happening. And it was that we did the thing that we thought and that we said we were going to do for so many decades. And everybody was probably having an array of feelings. For me, I felt this was something that I had been studying, that I had been reading about, that I had been writing about for years as an Israel reporter, and I wasn't sure when, but I knew that it was when. I didn't think it was if. I knew that this would erupt. So everyone's woken up. It is a Friday morning, it's 4 o'clock in the morning, everyone's in their stairwell, everyone's in their bomb shelter, everybody's looking at their phone, and the alert says, essentially, we've hit Iran, we've struck Iran, wake up and brace yourselves for a counterattack. The next day was very apocalyptic. It was scary. People were out buying food, buying water, trying to stock up their homes. and prepare themselves for what we expected to be the worst war that Israel has ever known, and I will tell you that it was. Iran is the head of the beast. Iran is the powerhouse in the Middle East, aside from Israel. And they are funding and training terror proxies around Israel's borders. Now, before I came to Israel, I understood that there was Hezbollah and there was Hamas, but I didn't really get it. Hezbollah is a force that people don't even know exactly how big they are, which is scary. Some estimates say that they're 50,000, some estimates say that they're 300,000. This is a proxy of Iran that, and I've done deep research on this because I researched for a show called Ghosts of Beirut, where I highlighted and followed the number 2 in Hezbollah, who rose through the ranks as a teenager all the way up until his assassination by Israel, which was a joint assassination between the United States and Israel, and this happened. Hezbollah is an enormous force that Israelis have been afraid of. When you get an alert as an Israeli that rockets are coming in, Israelis want to know, is it coming from Yemen? Is it coming from Lebanon? Is it coming from Gaza? And if it's coming from Iran, you better run for your life, okay? Now, we know in Israel which are going to be the worst. And I can rank it for you like this. We're going to have Iran at the top, Hezbollah, which is the largest after Iran. They're the closest to Iran. They get the most funding. They get the most training. We have Iran, Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis. Now, the Houthis are sending missiles from far away. We usually have time to be able to see that they're coming in and be intercepted. On June 15th, this hit very close to home. The rockets were coming in, the missiles were coming in. Now, these are ballistic missiles, and I keep saying over and over again in my coverage, I keep driving home, ballistic missiles. You get so desensitized to it. You hear about the ballistic missiles over and over again that you don't realize that they're ballistic. Now, what am I talking about ballistic? When you say this person's gone ballistic, what do you imagine? You imagine hands flying, you imagine things coming out, you imagine twirling, twisting. It's ballistic because each of these missiles are packed with explosives so that upon its hit, there's additional explosives packed inside of the missile that can go into different directions, explode, and cause maximum damage. The missiles coming from Iran, which we've all, as Israelis, been listening, hearing about, we know that they are dangerous. This was no joke. These were the most powerful missiles, and they started raining down. We got the alert that Israel had hit on Friday, and over the weekend, that's when everybody really started running to bomb shelters. And I have to tell you, the ones who did not are the ones on the list of the 28 Israelis that died during the 12 days of war. And some people ask me, what about those who were in their safe room? A direct hit from an Iranian missile, even if you're in your safe room, is going to kill you. It's Sunday. We made it through Shabbat. I'm alive, and it's not a joke. And I understand more than most people that this is pretty serious. Why? Because I've been studying this. I understand how powerful Iran is. Iran has the money. Iran has the power. Iran has the will. They've said it over and over again. They want to obliterate Israel. They want to wipe Israel off the face of the map. Why should we not trust our enemies? Why should we not trust nations that get up in front of the world, get up and say statements like, we want to wipe out the Zionist entity? Why would we not trust that? That's real. That's happening. All Israelis experience it on that weekend. It's Sunday, June 15th, and I am thinking about my news coverage. However, there's real serious fears that I'm not going to be able to reach my destination safely. There was a hit in Bat Yam from an Iranian missile that came down and exploded in Bat Yam. Bat Yam is a city outside of Tel Aviv. And I decided that I was going to go there and I was going to cover it. I think it's a very good thing that I did. I made it there in a taxi. Buses were running on a holiday schedule. People were not going outside. It was very dangerous. We were getting alerts to run into the shelter every several hours. And Iran, what they did was they overloaded the system. They overloaded the Israel system, our defense system. So because there were so many missiles coming in, the defense system could not prevent each and every one, and some of them made their way in and struck down. One of those happened at Bat Yam. I made my way over there. As I was walking toward the scene, I understand just how enormous this is. We are talking about destruction for 8 to 10 blocks, east, north, west, and south of the location. I saw where the missile hit. It busted open a building, and it busted open everything for blocks and blocks and blocks. I walked all the way around, and mind you, each step of my way, I'm anticipating that we're going to have another missile and that I'm going to need to run. I'm not going to know where I'm going to go to find safety, and this place has been obliterated. So any bomb shelter that would have existed in this area is broken. I wasn't thinking about that. I was thinking about the listeners of the Israel Daily News. I was thinking about my coverage, and I didn't even know how to put this together, how to put this in words. So I begin taking video. I start interviewing people. I interviewed an older gentleman. I asked him in Hebrew, what do you do when you hear the missiles? He said, do you know what I do when I hear the missiles coming overhead? This man was in his late 80s. He said, I sit at my kitchen table, I light up a cigarette, and I drink my coffee, because I'm not going to let them win. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to enjoy my kitchen, and nobody's moving me anywhere. And I said, I'm sorry to tell you this, sir, but this is very stupid of you, because your neighbors just one block over are dead right now. When I was on the scene, I saw people being wheeled away in wheelchairs. I saw limbs off of people. People were not okay. I finished my coverage. I finished taking my video. I finished writing my notes. And I decided to start making my way home. I'm waiting for a bus, there's no bus. I take a scooter. You can take electric scooters in Israel. Welcome to Tel Aviv. Be careful that you're looking over your shoulder, because people might be whizzing by you on the sidewalk trying to get from point A to point B. I'm on a scooter on my way back, and the siren rings out. I have 5 minutes. I park my scooter, because if you don't park your scooter, you get charged. So I park my scooter. I run to the nearest shelter. I'm not sure where I am. I figure out that I'm in Jaffa, and I find myself sitting in a bomb shelter, a public bomb shelter underground, with all Muslim Arabs from Jaffa. What are we doing? We're all doing the same thing. We're all sitting and shielding ourselves from Iranian terror. And this is something that I think that people really don't understand, is that when you get into the bomb shelter, when you get into the hospital, when you get into the universities, you see the diversity of Israel. You see everyone who lives in Israel. And that means when Israel gets attacked, when Israel had a Hamas attack on October 7th, it wasn't just Jews. It wasn't just your Jewish Israeli. These were all different types of people. There were Druze that were killed and attacked. There were Arab Israelis, all types of different people. There were Arab Christians. All of these people together are being targeted, and there we were sitting and waiting it out. I made my way back to my apartment, and that's when I started to work. It was about 9:30 p.m., and I knew that I was under the gun, quite literally. I knew that I needed to get this work done before a certain time, because I had already had 4 days of repeated evening sirens. So we had a general understanding that these sirens are coming in overnight, and that we have a certain amount of time to sleep. I wasn't going to sleep that night. I stayed up. I worked on my podcast. I recorded my podcast. I got a siren. It told me that I had a certain amount of time. I finished my recording. I closed my computer. Nothing came. I went upstairs into my neighbor's bomb shelter. Now, my apartment didn't have a bomb shelter. My upstairs neighbor's apartment has a safety room that she had installed and paid for in her apartment. She's very glad that she did that. She saved all of our lives, quite literally. I'm in my apartment. I'm working. I'm waiting for the missile to sign out, the siren to sound out. And I finally, after 2 hours, there was a glitch on this night where they gave us the alert. And between the time of the alert and the time of the siren to tell us that the missile was coming in was actually about 2 hours. Now this was because there was an error. You're supposed to have 5 to 8 minutes, but it was about 2 hours. In those 2 hours, I finished my work, I published my podcast, I put my pajamas on, I sat on my bed and I said, I guess it's not happening. I guess we're not getting this missile that they told us about 2 hours ago. And I'm sitting on my bed, and what happens? The siren rings out. And this comes on the heels of me reporting to everyone and telling everyone that when a siren rings out, you better have some closed-toed shoes, you better be wearing your clothes, you better have your documents, and you should take your valuables with you. I didn't have enough time. I zipped up my computer, I put it next to my couch. Side note, if any of you have read some of my recent writings, I've been writing about premonitions that I had about this day. I had some very strong visions for years leading up to this, that my living room window was going to be blown in by an Iranian attack. Now, I thought that it would be nuclear, which in the case of a nuclear attack, I don't think anyone is safe, and it doesn't matter where you are, and it doesn't matter where you put your computer. Nevertheless, I imagined my windows blowing in. And so every single time that I left my apartment, every single time that I needed to go anywhere, even if it was to the corner store, I zipped up my computer and I put it behind the couch because I imagined that if my window was blowing in, it would not get my laptop, my prized possession, for my work. I am now in my home, I'm running upstairs. I get upstairs, and by the way, when I had gotten back to my apartment at 9:30 p.m., I was standing in my room, and I thought to myself, this is getting serious. Every day, we have 1 or 2 missiles that are not being intercepted, that are blowing up the streets, and it was day 4. What's going to happen? What's going to happen to our city? When is this going to stop? If this continues every day, we're going to be obliterated. Everything is going to be obliterated. I understood that very clearly because I had seen the destruction. And other Israelis who had not ventured out, and rightfully so, we were all instructed to shelter at home, they didn't see the sheer destruction that I saw. They didn't understand that ballistic missiles are ballistic. They didn't understand that when they hit, they ruin buildings and cement for blocks and blocks. So I'm in my apartment. I run upstairs into my neighbor's safe room. I'm knocking on the door, and they are taking things quite lightly. They walk into the room, they close the door. I'm creating a sense of urgency. Hey guys, we need to get in there. We need to get in there. Get in this room. We shut the door. We lock the mamad window, and we sit. And I had a very strong feeling that it wasn't good. And we were sitting there, I was holding my breath, and we heard the missile fly by outside of our building. It didn't fly, it whipped. It was the loudest sound that I've ever heard in my entire life. And something that I really want to hit on is that I felt the power of the missile, almost as if a scary neighbor was outside of your door. I could feel it. The force coming through the air, ripping through the air, was so dramatic. The sound when it hit was so loud. I was extremely confident that it was my building, and that if it wasn't my building, it was the building next door. When I got into the safe room, I did something that a journalist might do, which is I started rolling, because I had a strong feeling that something was coming our way. It was dark in the safe room, so I didn't bother to do video, and there were other people in the safe room. There were my upstairs neighbor and 2 of her female guests. One was a 16-year-old girl from Paris who had come to Israel for a vacation. She did not get that. I'm going to play for you just a little snip of what I recorded that evening. I hope you'll be able to hear it. I wove it into my podcast. And I encourage everyone to listen to my show, our raw and scary story of surviving a ballistic missile attack, because I include video, I include audio, and it's very visual. You'll be able to really understand in a very clean way. It's just about 20 minutes. Now my neighbors were praying. I kept myself very quiet because after I heard and they were screaming. This is the loudest boom that I have heard. I'm gonna let you hear this war, and I've heard a lot. We have to hear what's going on. So I didn't capture the boom in this moment right here, but it's in the podcast, just maybe 15, 20 seconds earlier. I was trying to get everyone to be quiet because I understood that if our building had been hit, it might collapse. And everyone was screaming. I was the only one that had my wits about me, and it's really because I had been to the site the night before and reported on the ground that I understood what was going on. And I had the wherewithal to say, this is not a joke, we're not gonna scream, we're not gonna cry, we're not gonna lose it. We're gonna sit here and we're gonna figure this out. I made everyone be quiet and I started listening. I started reaching out to some sources on the ground that I had, and I asked, where was the missile hit? One of my sources messaged me and said, I can't tell you. I sent him my location, and he said, it was you. I wanted him to understand I wasn't reaching out for the purpose of getting news. I was reaching out because my life was in danger. So I'm sitting and I'm speaking with my upstairs neighbor, Marisa, and she says to me, oh, we're gonna go out, and let's open the door. I think that the home front command said that we can all leave now. We get notifications from our home front command. It's in an application, it tells you when you can go. And she said, you can go. And I said, if there is anything for us to open our door to. And she thought I was laughing. She started laughing. She thought it was funny. I was the first to venture. I opened the door, total destruction. The ceiling was on the floor. Every item was broken. Her front door was dented in. We could not get out of the apartment. I started messaging friends. I messaged a friend. I let my friend know that we were inside, that we couldn't get out. They sent a rescue team. It took about an hour. Teams came, they broke the door down, they brought us out. The building was still standing, but all the apartments were completely wrecked. There was a flood, pipes were burst. It was a nightmare. I walked out to a scene of the kind of scene that you see on TV, with everyone in front of news crews. There was blood on the floor, there was shattered glass. There were people in a frenzy. Shop owners were there trying to keep watch over their shops, and rightfully so. There was looting. Some of the shops next to my home was looted. My home was looted 3 times. We don't know by who. I came back to my apartment. I went around. It was really a little trip that morning. Just what do you do after that? What do you do after this? Where do you go? You cannot return to your apartment. So and we weren't allowed in for some time. So I went around, I went to a friend, had some water, went to a different friend, sat there, and then I fell asleep on her floor in her safe room on a little makeshift bed that she had made for herself and her baby. She had a very little baby at the time, just under a year old. They were sleeping in the safe room. And when I made my way back after falling asleep and into a deep slumber, I had been awake for over a day, I went back to my apartment and I walked in the door to see what had happened. My apartment was totally trashed. The walls were down. There were walls that separated bedrooms. They were gone, so that the whole place was kind of one open field. And my jewelry box was on the floor next to my front door, empty. Somebody had come and emptied it out. That was probably the worst moment of the experience, even with dealing with the Iranians. Knowing that there is a whole country that wants to terrorize us, but feeling that back at home there was even one individual that could have taken advantage of that situation was very disheartening. The only piece of jewelry that I have left, I'm wearing. It's my grandmother's Magen David, her Star of David. I put it around my neck in the days leading up to the attack because I just had a strong sense that times were not good. I honestly put it on because I imagined myself walking over the Jordanian border and needing to have currency on me. I'm very serious about that. As you may know, airports get shut down during storms like this. So I put it around my neck to save it, and thankfully it's still with me today, and I keep it close to my heart. There is a little positivity here, despite there was somebody that looted my jewelry, and unfortunately people that came back, ripped air conditioners out of the wall, took furniture, took people's washing machines from my building. Despite all of this, we don't know who they are. There were so many people that helped. By the end of the day, I'm so emotional, by the end of the day, a friend's apartment was filled up with about 20 bags from women that were my size in Israel that brought me bags of clothes. People mailed me jewelry. People sent with friends and bags for me, jewelry for me, things that they wanted to replace my story. And the outpouring of support from the community here in the United States and mostly from my neighbors in Israel was very impressive and very emotional. And I think that it's important to note that throughout all of this terror, the things that have stuck with me have been the deeply human disgust and the deeply human beauty. The disgust being that somebody could, in your worst moment of life, go into your home and steal your jewelry. And on the flip side, that people could stop their day, put a bag together for you, and walk it over to you. I had so many people who did not call, they just showed up. They did not call me, they came. That morning, I walked out that morning to CNN rolling on me, coming out of the building, to, at a minimum, 3 friends. It was 6 o'clock in the morning, and they were waiting for me outside my building. That is support that you don't know that you need until you're in the situation, and it's happening. So this is the story of the destruction, and I want to share that I continued my work. I did not miss an event. I did not miss a podcast. I set up a studio in my friend Nicole's home. She cleared out her workroom so that I could have her workroom. I was moved into a hotel. I lived in a hotel for 2 months. I continued my work. I don't know how. I just managed. And one thing that I have to share with everybody, when you're going through an extreme destruction like this, a lot of people were surprised at my resilience, but I said, well, it was the biggest project that I never asked for, and I didn't have any time to say no. So you just have to get up and you have to keep going, not because you want to, but because you have to. And I was able to rebuild. I just came back to be with my parents, and a few people suggested to me that I take a break from Israel, but I wanted to have a home to come back to. So I spent my months living in a hotel, looking for a new apartment. I moved in. I took my stuff out of storage, which, by the way, you have to really be, in those 24 hours after the hit came, I found myself on the phone in Hebrew with a storage unit moving, and by the next day I had moved everything into storage. These are just little things that you're not thinking of when something so big happens and you're dealing with terror. To be finding your own solutions is something that nobody prepares you for, but it's you, it's your life, and I can't stress enough how when something's affecting you, you actually need to jump into the seat of director and you need to direct the ship, because there are people that are there to help you, but they're waiting for your direction because they don't know where you want your stuff, they don't know where you want to go, they don't know that you want to live in a hotel instead of live in your friend's spare bedroom. It's a lot of decisions that you need to make, and you need to be clear-minded enough to make them. And sometimes you can take some advice from friends, because my friends encouraged me to go into the hotel, which I didn't want to do because for some reason I believed I'd be only out of a home for a few days. I was not. I was displaced for 2 months. So sometimes it is important to listen to your friends and get suggestions, but at the end of the day, you're the one standing there at that tent, putting your name on the list to be added to the Tel Aviv municipality's list of displaced people that need to be relocated. That night at around 11 p.m., I got a call from the city asking me if I was ready to go to my hotel, and I said yes. I was sitting at a friend's apartment and packed up my stuff and went over, and I was there for 2 months. In the 2 years of covering this war, it has just been so nonstop, and it has just been so deeply personal. And for me to have to switch gears from reporting in Bat Yam to dealing with the tax authority the next day to declare myself as a victim of hostilities who needed to get compensation and deal with all the paperwork was very shocking. However, like I said, I just looked at it as a new project that I didn't want to do, but had to do. I want to note that I know that it's been difficult as Jews outside of Israel to watch the sheer destruction on TV and to feel absolutely disturbed about the images coming out from Gaza. And it's been difficult for me too. However, these images are not really being shared in Israel. Some news outlets are sharing them, very few, but it's extremely unpopular. So if any of you are feeling like you're not on the same page as Israelis, there are many clear reasons. First of all, we've all been in some way affected by this war. My home got hit. A neighbor's had their husband whisked off to reserve duty for 2 years, in and out of the army. So the Israelis are having a really different experience of this war than the outside world. And from a journalistic standpoint, I want to talk about the immense changes in the region. First of all, Israel hitting Iran was an enormous strike of courage, and even myself, having dealt with, even in my hour of being after my house got hit by an Iranian missile, my attitude was that Israel needs to do what it needs to do to take care of Iran, even if it means that I have to be displaced, and even if it means that the buildings in Tel Aviv have to come down, and even if it means that Israelis have to pay the ultimate price, which thankfully I didn't. I survived to tell my story, and maybe things would be different if I wasn't here, or if somebody else had to tell my story. But even in the darkest hours for me, as a Jew, looking at myself as a character in our nation's history, I understood what was going on. And what was going on is that Israel is defeating a force that wants to wipe us off the face of the earth in order that they can be the dominant and domineering power in the region, and Israel is not letting them do that. And the reason that Israel can afford to do something like that is because of people like me that are civilians that are saying, we understand what's going on. You can wake us up at 4 o'clock in the morning with a notification and get us out of bed. And instead of being upset, we're going to say, we did it. That's how strong the Jewish identity is. That's how strong Israelis feel. And that's how much Israelis are connected to the story. Give me any nation that every single civilian is watching the news and understands our history. Give me a nation that can talk about Sinat Chinam after we had an outpouring of disturbances on Yom Kippur 2023. In short, in 2023, right before Simchat Torah, on Yom Kippur, there was a lot of infighting in Israel between Israelis that felt that church and state needed to be separated, and they didn't want to see people doing public displays of prayer for Yom Kippur. I was one of those people that got their prayer services broken up. I run a community called Tribe Tel Aviv, where I encourage and support Olim Chadashim, meaning new immigrants that come from all around the world to make Israel their home. And my intention in this organization that I run with Rabbi Jonathan Feldman is that we are encouraging Israelis to stay through social programs and by bringing in high-impact speakers that can give talks about what's going on. Sometimes we bring in military analysts, sometimes we bring in CEOs. So what we have here are people that are highly charged, but they're highly charged because they love Israel, they want to see Israel succeed. And what happens on Yom Kippur was that people came out to protest outdoor prayer because they felt that prayer should be done in synagogues and not in the street. They feel that they don't want anyone's religious identity to be imposed upon them. And it was a huge, huge issue. And even in this, I can tell you the reason for that is because people feel that they are defending their state and whatever their idea is. These are people that really are connected to what's going on and are able to say, we're talking about secular people that really, you might not think know Tanakh or know the Bible, and for me to be having conversations with people and say, oh, that was sinat chinam, which means baseless hatred. The fact that your average secular Israeli can tell you that in the Second Temple times, we had baseless hatred and it divided the Jewish people in the kingdom of Judah means that we have a very connected community. And so when you have people that are watching infighting, and meanwhile they're in a bikini playing volleyball on the beach and they're talking about sinat chinam, baseless hatred, it means that we're doing something right. And it means that we need to keep moving forward with our efforts. Look at what has happened in the region. Syria has toppled. Syria is an enemy nation of Israel. You have somebody in power in Syria saying on public television to the world in front of Arab listeners that they don't want Israel to be an enemy and that there's potential collaboration with Israel in the future. What? My word, that is not something I ever thought that I would hear in my lifetime. We have Lebanese Christians talking about coming back to Lebanon because Hezbollah has been defeated and Christianity is safe again in Lebanon, and having discussions with each other about when they are going to return from their diaspora to come to Lebanon. Why is that? Because Israel boldly faced Hezbollah, a force that they do not even know how big it is, and is being funded and trained by Iran. We have Jordan shooting out of the sky missiles that are coming in from Iran to support their neighbor that they signed a peace deal with in 1994. And that peace deal still stands. We have Egypt. A lot of people have a lot of difficulty with Egypt. Nevertheless, they're sitting at the table talking about how to get hostages back. Times are changing. The region is changing, and it's changing because Israel has not wavered in its commitment to religious freedom in the region, and because Israel is going to create peace through showing its strength. And I do appreciate that. Peace through strength. This is what the Trump administration says. That's the language of the Middle East. And if any of you here listening think that Arab nations are impressed with Israeli diplomacy, you're insane. Arab nations are impressed with Israel not backing down for 2 years of war. I did not think that our nation was capable of carrying out a 2-year war because I didn't think that we had the resources, the money, or the manpower to do it. Israel has single-handedly, you could also include the United States, but we're talking about the guts of Israeli pilots that got up into planes and went over Iran's airspace, dropped bombs on their nuclear facilities to protect people like myself from a future attack, and bringing all of those pilots back home. You know, all of those pilots came home? Not one died. We are talking about a different Middle East. And it's hard, and it's violent, but Arab nations don't do diplomacy. They look around and they see who's the biggest and the baddest, and who's going to be in trouble if they don't comply. And that's how it works. I want to say that a lot of people have asked me if I'm leaving Israel or if I got deterred by the Iranian attack, and I say I'm in Israel because I'm a character in our nation's future. We're not even 100 years old. I'm there journaling, I'm writing, I'm encouraging the newcomers to stay by giving them professional advancement, by giving them opportunities to meet change makers in our country, by giving them a view into what is possible in Israel, by making connections for them that they wouldn't have otherwise had because they didn't go into the army. And I plan on building the nation, and I'm heavily investing in my Hebrew fluency so that I'll be able to represent the international voice at the Knesset. And I am not going to be scared out of my own country by people who wish to seek our destruction. It's the same story as ever. It's just that now Israel has an army that is powerful. And so the story has shifted just a little bit. I want to encourage everyone. This is so important. I think that this is the most important thing that I'm going to share tonight. Do not shrink in your Judaism. Do not tuck your Star of David into your shirt. Do not take your kippah off your head. Now is the time to pull your kippah out of your pocket and put it on your head at the workplace and say, I am here. I am not going to shrink. I am not going to be a Jew on my knees. I am not Shylock in the court. We're not going to do that. I want you to be proud. I want you to talk about your values. I want you to talk about your Judaism. I want you to talk about the changes that Israel has waged in the Middle East for religious freedom. I want you to get together with your families on Shabbat dinner. We have hostages that were doing their best to keep Shabbat in a tunnel without lights on. We need to pick it up. We need support from around the world. We need everybody to be hugging their wives and daughters and sisters and husbands a little tighter, getting together on Shabbat dinner, doing what we do as Jews. You know, they say that Jews don't keep Shabbat, Shabbat keeps the Jews. And I think that that's true. So if there's any takeaway that I have, I know I took you all on a journey through my work, through my home being destroyed, through living in a hotel, to stepping back and looking at the picture and saying, wow, look what has changed. The way that you can support the effort is by standing up. I'm a Jew. No one will make me feel less of a person, no matter where you are. It has never, ever, ever worked in our nation's history to pretend that we are not who we are. It has only handicapped us. The more that we don't respect ourselves, the more that we shy away from who we are, the more that we say things like, I'm Jewish, have emphasis on the ish. I've heard that. I hate it. The more that we do that, the less respect that we get from our neighbors, the less power we have. And right now, at a time where the Jewish community in New York City is very afraid of a mayoral election that is not going to be in favor of the Jewish community, this is the time. This is the time to put on your Magen David, your Star of David. This is the time to walk around in your office. You have a kippah, put it on. I welcome everyone to follow me on social media. My name is Shanna Fuld. I run the Israel Daily News. I welcome everyone to listen to my podcast. It comes out on Mondays and Thursdays every week. I put out a newsletter each week on Sunday evenings where I write a little bit about what's going on in my life in Israel, followed by the top 5 stories coming out of the state. And I welcome everybody to come to Israel. There's a ceasefire underway, things are changing, and we hope to re-enter a world of normalcy and hopefully building and construction in the future. And I send you off tonight with only messages of Jewish pride. Thank you, everybody.
If anybody has any questions, I will come down, you can ask them. Okay? Does anybody have any questions for Shanna? Deborah? Go ahead.
It's so nice to meet you. Okay. I'm just curious, do you think that Hamas is really going to put down their weapons? Good question.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Repeat the question.
Yes. The question is, do I believe that Hamas is going to put down their weapons? Objectively, no. I've been following the news since the ceasefire. We are a week and a day into the ceasefire. being upheld. Hamas is releasing their own videos of them beheading and shooting dead Palestinians in the street in the town square as if it's the year 1402 in an effort to make a display of dissent. And there's ties to anyone they believe has been collaborating or communicating with Israel has been shot dead in front of everyone because they want to make it clear that that's not acceptable. Just today, before I came here, I reported in the Israel Daily News podcast that the Psychological Help Center in Gaza, a Palestinian Psychological Help Center, their staff reported that Hamas came to their door with guns and had each person come out and then replaced them with the Hamas family members to enter in there and send everybody home. They took over the HQ. That happened today. Today. I think it's funny that anybody believes that a terror organization is going to disarm themselves when they first got into power in 2006 via a bloody coup in which they beheaded the Palestinian Authority that was running Gaza at the time and had a terrible, violent takeover. That's how they got into power. Does anyone think that an organization that seizes power by murdering everyone is going to put down their weapon and say, never mind, no, I do not believe that that's going to happen. It's objectively not happening. And Hamas is continuing with their violent progression in the Gaza Strip because there's no one bigger and badder in the area to encourage them otherwise.
I have a question. So a question that's been asked a lot in this congregation, especially among the younger generation, is, I'm talking about the college kids, I'm talking about kids in the 20s. They're watching the news and they're seeing what's happening in Gaza. So a lot of these people who don't really know the extent of what you're talking about are thinking the IDF is doing this, Israel's doing this, what was happening to the people, the innocent people of Gaza. I know that I try to explain it as best as I can, but it's happening. We see it on social media. I hear it with the college kids. I hear it with some of my own kids. So how do we answer this?
I think it's really difficult because, first of all, there's been so many civilian casualties in Gaza. It's such a high number, and it's such a high number also for such a small space. And on October 9th, just a couple days after October 7th, I was interviewed by a news reporter who asked me what I thought was going to happen next, or what the fallout was going to be, and I said, we're a country of 9 million people in Israel. Of course, everybody's going to be connected to somebody who died on October 7th. It's a country of 9 million people. Now let's minimize that and go over to Gaza. 2 million people, 2.2 million people. And, you know, the estimates are out over 60,000 dead. First of all, we'll never really know what the actual number is. We really won't. Even myself, I've been looking for the ratio number. Israel will tell you that they have a 1-to-1 civilian casualty, 1-to-1 meaning for every combatant, one civilian is killed, which is supposed to be a very good number for war. Some other numbers will tell you that it's 5-to-1. The numbers and the images, they are very powerful, and I understand why so many Americans and young people feel that they are standing with the underdog. I'm going to give you a very, very, very unpopular and Israeli perspective, which is going to be hard for you to hear. Israelis don't care about what the international community thinks of them. Whether that is good or bad is debatable, and Donald Trump said to Bibi Netanyahu, you better clean this up because you're on the verge of becoming a pariah state. No Israeli cares. Israelis don't care. Israelis have been subjected to so much terror, so much heinous, I mean, the kinds of terror that Israelis have been subjected to have been things out of a medieval torture book. You know, I mean, you have to be really creative to think of the ways to mutilate a person, and that's what you get from terror groups, from Palestinian terror groups to Jews. Why? Because they believe that it's a good thing to do that. So this is what I say. You keep being a proud Jew. You keep sharing the facts. You keep saying this is terrible. We don't want to see civilians dead. We understand why this is so disturbing. Israel is in a precarious spot in which they need to defend themselves and move forward. This heinous attack, had it happened to any other nation, would have warranted the same response. And we feel deeply disturbed. I personally feel deeply disturbed about the violence in Gaza. Do I want to see Gaza leveled, flattened? Do I want to see buildings come down? No, nobody wants to see that. I say something that my mom actually talks about over here. Mom talks about female leadership a lot, and talks about how with more female leadership there'd be less violence. And I actually really do believe that. There's a group in Israel called Mothers of Terror Victims, and it's mothers of Arab and Jewish people who were killed. Some of the young people were killed by Israeli sniper fire. They were wrongly targeted. Some of these people had their kids that were killed by Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and they get together. So my response about the noise of the college campuses is we just need to do the best that we can. We need to know our facts. We need to be proud Jews. We need to say things like, I so agree, this is so disturbing. I wish that it didn't have to be like this. I think, you could say Israel is doing what any nation would do in response to such a heinous attack. I really hate it. I really wish that we didn't have to have war. I really wish that the language of the Middle East wasn't through violence and power. But unfortunately, today's reality is that's what it is. And I don't know what it would look like if we had mothers in office all throughout the Middle East, and we had women at the negotiating table trying to bring kids home. I don't know what that will look like, because that's not our current reality. And we don't have a lot of female hostage negotiators. I don't know that I've seen even one. So I really do feel that with more diversity at the table, we'd have better outcomes. And I really do think that the more that you stand up as a proud Jew, you can show your empathy, you can show your humanity, but you really can't abandon the Jewish people at this time. It's never worked for us. It's never worked. No one has ever stood up for Jews more because they pandered to the status quo or the consensus of the day. All you have to do is open up any history book in any country at any time and you'll know that.
Jeff?
How,
Yeah, I'll give you the mic.
you said that Israelis don't care about the perception. Does that apply just to Jewish Israelis, or how are relations? How do the Arab and Palestinians do they care, and how are they getting along with Jewish people?
You're probably also asking about the Druze, right?
Jews, yeah.
Druze.
Oh, the Druze or the Jews?
No,
Jews.
Non-Jews.
Non-Jews.
Okay, listen, I actually think that the Arab Israelis care even less. Okay, I know that sounds crazy. I went, my fishmonger across the street from where I used to live, we both got affected by the missile. At the beginning of the Iran war, I went into him to buy some fish. He's an Arab, Muslim, Israeli. He lives in Jaffa with his family. I consider our relationship to be really good. Because we live across the street from each other, we talk a lot, and I mean, I just can't express to you how much he just felt like any other Jewish Israeli when I spoke to him, if not more. I said to him, what do you think is going to happen with this Iran war? Do you think we're going to get hit? How bad do you think it's going to be? Oh, forget about them. Don't pay them any mind. Those Iranians, who cares about them? Israel is going to be fine. We're going to be fine. And he goes, and if we're not fine, I'm taking my wife and my baby and I'm going somewhere else. So I think that people really assign sometimes a little bit too much meaning and too much significance when people are dealing with their lives. You understand what I'm saying? Like when you're dealing with, am I gonna live or am I gonna die? People care a little bit less because you're talking to me as a person who's sitting in a bomb shelter while Iranian ballistic missiles are coming over my head, and I'm sitting down next to Muslim, Arab, Israelis, and we are all having the same experience. So regarding the perception, I just think that everyone's trying to make it. Meaning everyone's trying to put food on the table, everyone's trying to pay their rent, and everyone's trying to keep their families safe. And I don't think that especially during wartime, that the concern is about what the international community thinks. And I don't know that sentiment is even reaching people so much in Israel, for the good and the bad. We're doing, we're doing our own thing in Israel, and personally, that's one of the reasons why I like to live there, because I don't have to worry so much. I mean, it's actually insane to prefer to live somewhere where my neighbor wants to kill me, but at least they're not going to protest me on the subway. It's really, like, it's really wild, but do I think that the Arab Israelis care about their perception? I haven't done a survey, so I can't say, but I can tell you from the Arab Israelis that I have spoken with, and I've spoken with more than just my friend across the street, no, they don't care.
Laurel.
A couple of questions. One, where is the laptop? Did it survive at all? Just curious on that. Two, I've been seeing on Zaka Tel Aviv, or whatever they call that website, they said that Hezbollah is getting more active in attacking again and has been doing a lot of attacks recently, and they also said that Hamas is rebuilding. Is that, do you feel that what they're sending us is true, Zaka Tel Aviv, or?
Okay, so you're asking about her laptop.
Yes.
You're asking if
Zaka Tel Aviv is the
Zaka
website.
Tel Aviv is reporting
Accurately.
the accurate news of Hezbollah and Hamas?
Yes.
Okay.
I can't speak. I haven't seen so much of the Hezbollah activity. I haven't been seeing reports, and I read the news every day, and I'm in touch with my sources every day. I haven't seen too much about Hezbollah, but Hamas, I read a report today that they have rebuilt and they have had so many people rejoin in the last 2 years, and that whatever number of Hamas officials have been killed and Hamas combatants have been killed, they've already been replaced by young people. And honestly, I can so understand why. You look around, everything's destroyed. You likely have an even stronger desire to jump in on the cause that you believe is just, although there's plenty of people in the Gaza Strip expressing their dissent, their dislike about Hamas. There's other fringe groups that have risen up, families. And when I say family, I don't mean a nuclear family of 5. I mean families of dozens and dozens of cousins and brothers and sisters that are trying to see what they could do about putting themselves into the power position in the Gaza Strip. But it's going to be very nasty and bloody, because it's going to be whoever has the better ammunition to kill the other. So Hamas, yes. Hezbollah, I haven't seen so much about Hezbollah rebuilding. I think Hezbollah is licking their wounds right now. They've been decimated and destroyed pretty bad. And about the laptop survived. My strategic placement of the laptop worked. I put it behind the arm of the couch, and I zipped it in a laptop cover, and I zipped it closed, and when I went, it was actually sitting in a puddle of water because a pipe burst, and the laptop bag absorbed it, and the laptop did not even get wet.
Wow.
I'm still using it, and did I get it backed up?
What's your data backed up?
My data was backed up. Thank you for asking. But yeah, my computer is my lifeline. I do all of my reports on it. I use it every day. So it was the first thing that I cared about after I noticed that all of my jewelry was robbed. I went to see if my computer was robbed, and it was not. Yes, who has another question?
Neil?
Sort of a two-part question about, I'll call it the end game. What do you think the average Israeli sees as the likely end game in Gaza? What will happen? You've stated something about Hamas, they're never going to just throw down their arms. I think most of us here in this room probably agree with that from day one. But what is the end game that Israelis see as likely to happen in Gaza?
Are we live streaming stuff?
Yep.
Okay. I've actually sat in the Knesset on meetings called the day after, what's going to happen, and it's actually pretty cool to bring in member of Knesset Sharon Haskel, who's incredible. She's a mother. She has little kids, and she's running around all over Israel doing her work as a Knesset member. She pulled together a team of experts that each had different ideas about what to do the day after, which we have now arrived at the day after, apparently. Some ideas are like this. There's a professor named Moshe Kedar, and his idea, and he's been talking about this for a long time, is that Palestinians are tribal and that it's ill-informed to think that every Palestinian wants to be governed by one force and that they're all the same and that you can put them all under the same blanket. This is his idea. And his idea is that smaller families need to rise up to take care and control over their jurisdiction. That's one idea that came up at the Knesset meeting. I don't think that will happen because I think that unfortunately the Western powers that are involved in these discussions can't really get behind something like that because they understand democracies, president, vice president. One criticism that I really have is Western mindset on an Eastern culture. I think it's very bad that so many Americans assume, I'm sure that a lot of people are confused as to why so much of the LGBTQ community in the United States is out waving flags for Hamas, with them not realizing that there's no room for being gay in Palestinian society, and in fact there are safe houses in Israel that house gay men and women that have escaped their family violence for being gay and made it into Israel, and they actually get refuge. If you make it into Israel as a gay person and you are up against violence at home, there's a place for you to stay, and there's not just one place. So I'm just saying that just to highlight to you how Westerners feel that the ideology of peace and freedom and liberty and justice for all applies in places where those aren't the ideologies, those aren't the things that people subscribe to. I think Americans are subscribed to life, liberty, and the pursuit of justice deep in our bones. I think it's actually incredible. I think it's amazing. I think it's based off of the Torah. I think that it's the reason that Israel and the United States stand close together, because there's so much alignment in the views. So this idea about the tribal thing, I don't think that's going to go through, because I think that the people that are moderating the arrangement would not believe in that, and also because, and Israel has done this, and that's why you're seeing people being killed in the street is because these smaller militias, these smaller families, Israel has tried to reportedly support them by giving them ammunition so that they could fight themselves against Hamas. But if they are caught, they're killed. So that's why I don't think that this tribal thing is going to work. What is the end game? I'll tell you that there are some right-wing Israelis that really do want to see Gaza taken over and occupied by Israel. And the reason for that, I was just on the phone earlier with someone today that said that she was having a talk with somebody who said that Israel is doing a land grab. Okay? Israel's not doing a land grab. Israel would have done a land grab many decades ago if the size of our country was what we were after. We've never been after having a big country. We're after having a safe place for the Jews. So there's a lot of people that think that Gaza should be occupied by Israel because they have seen the response to pulling out in the Gaza disengagement in 2005, seeing every single Jew be ripped out of their home because they were living in Gaza and they were no longer allowed to be there because Israel wanted to extend an olive branch and say, we're gonna create peace here. You have your own place, we will have our own place. There are a lot of Israelis that feel that it is safer to have an occupied Gaza. And I will actually tell you from my personal experience, because I live in Israel, I would have never said this 10 years ago living in the United States, I really think it's a bad idea to remove Jews from the West Bank or from Yehuda Shomron, from the Judea and Samaria. If we've learned anything from dividing people more deeply and from creating lines where Jews and Arabs cannot be together and do not know each other, you actually get more hatred and more violence because people don't know each other. And that's why I think New York City is such an awesome place, because you have Arabs and Muslims and Christians and everyone lives together. And when October 7th broke out, my Egyptian Muslim neighbors from Howard Beach, Queens reached out to me to make sure that I was okay. I don't think that your average Egyptian would have reached out to your average Israeli. It was that New York City American value that we're all one, that we're all together, humanity, that's what that does. And so I actually don't believe and I don't advocate for keeping the societies super separate with hard lines. And from a very Israeli perspective, when you remove Jews and you remove the Israeli security, you just get violence. You just simply have a security issue on your hands. And that's not like an idea. I'm just talking about the facts on the ground. I'm just talking about when you look at history and you look at the news and you're in a place like me where you're reporting the news, you can see what happens when you remove the Jews from all of these places. So there are a lot of Israelis that for safety reasons want Gaza to continue to have an IDF presence. You have other Israelis that feel that and they'll say it. They'll say, we don't want anything to do with you guys. We don't want to have to provide. We don't want to give. We don't want to talk. Just go away. I've seen so many interviews with Israelis saying, just leave us alone. So what do I think is going to happen moving forward? I don't know. I'm really an observer of history. I always make sure that I note that I'm not an activist. I am a reporter, and I really try not to get too attached emotionally to the details. And everything I'm sharing with you right now is just from my position as an observer. I'm not sure what's going to happen, but I do think that it's a major security concern to completely take all Israelis out of the area, completely and utterly, entirely withdraw. The United States has already announced that they will not be putting troops on the ground. They will not be putting American forces on the ground. So who's gonna do the work? Who's gonna be the big bad guys with guns that's gonna show up and say, Hamas, you can't do this again? Who's gonna do that? It's not going to be the Americans.
Israel.
So it's going to be Israel. And then Israel has to do it. And then everybody hates us for it. So, and then you do this. Are you Israeli?
Yes, I am.
And that's why you don't care.
It's not that I don't care, it's just that the fact is that it's an ongoing thing for years and years, where for some reason the Jewish people have always been hidden in history, in my opinion, going back still to the Holocaust. So at this point, living through the stages, because I grew up with Holocaust parents who survived and learned history and happened to wind up studying Jewish, and I got involved in Jewish education just for my heritage. And what I see is happening in this world and had happened. It's not that I don't care, it's that I feel that it's time to put a foot down.
It's
and
time to
say,
put a foot down.
This is it, stop.
So I'm saying that I can tell that you're Israeli when I say who's going to do it, and you say Israel's going to do it. Because you know that when nobody else is stepping up to the plate to defend Israeli lives, Israel has to defend Israeli lives, and it doesn't matter that everybody hates it and that everybody's waving their flags and yelling and screaming, because at the end of the day, nobody's going to come in. Donald Trump is not sending American troops into Gaza to prevent Hamas from attacking Israel again. So I'm just saying that from the Israeli perspective is, okay, everyone's going to hate us, but we got to do it. Or we got to do whatever it is. Should we
Gotta
see?
do what we gotta do.
Got to do what we got to do.
And as we see, and the world also has seen another side to the Israeli people and the Jewish people now recently, because we have tried to make peace in many different aspects, and it doesn't work. And they break, and of course, they're proving themselves, as you said before, they're not gonna put their weapons down, but more and more people are beginning to realize that Israel isn't that so bad. That
Well,
they're
also-
deserving to fight their life.
Even if Israel does look so bad, does anybody remember what happened before Egypt made peace with Israel? There was a big bloody war. There was a big bloody war between Israel and Egypt. And you know what happened about a year and a half later? Peace deal. And that's why I think that the peace through strength, unfortunately,
I don't believe that.
you don't believe in peace through strength?
No, I think the peace at that time just made them those people spread throughout the world and become bad.
Sorry, can you say that again?
I believe when Arafat signed the peace treaty, that is when the people of all those countries and all those bad people started escaping their own environment and went all over the entire world, built themselves up, and that's when
Oh,
all
are you
the
talking about Oslo?
terrorists.
Are you talking about Oslo, or are you talking about Egyptian peace with Sadat?
All of it, all through the stages. But more, it happened more after that peace treaty got signed.
Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna let you can definitely continue, because we have a little differences after, because I think it's interesting, but we have two more questions. Gary?
What you could do is you could take everyone's question, and then I'll do a final, I'll respond, and I'll do a closing.
Okay. Gary?
Okay, so in my opinion, Hamas got exactly what Hamas wanted. They turned world opinion against Israel. We've got an increase across the world, not only just against Israel, but anti-Semitism. And in my opinion, the Israeli government has done a lousy job in public relations in defending themselves as to what they had to do. I'd like to hear your comment on that.
So there's a lot of speculation. I'll just say on top of what I have family, I'm half Israeli. My own family in Israel believes that days before October 7th, Netanyahu knew this was going to happen, and that Netanyahu allowed it for his own reasons, because of what he was facing, and that, in fact, Hamas was very strategic in planning all of this, and knowing what Gary is trying to say is that anti-Semitism would explode, which it has, and it's everywhere, whether it's London, it's France, it's upstate New York, it's in Buffalo, where your kids went. My son was a victim. Whoever would have thought that would have happened, and what Gary's saying, it was strategically done.
Okay. Do we have another question? And anyone else have another
Jeannie?
question? We have a few questions, so take everyone's questions and then I'll respond. Do you want the mic?
I have a question. A lot of the questions are about generalization, but from what I'm getting from you, it seems like the personal attack on your apartment and your space strengthened your resolve. How else did that change you, since it was not just being a reporter, but it was very personal at this point for you? How has the attack specifically on your apartment and your space changed you?
Okay, so personal view, Dennis?
Yeah, I know the United States supposedly says they're with Israel, but I would like to know how the Israelis feel about the way our United States government is supporting them.
Okay, what Israel feels about our government, and the support they're either getting or not
About the
getting.
support
Okay,
they're
and Jeff?
getting and whether they feel it's real
If
support
it's
or
been
not.
valuable.
It's just verbal and not much else.
Okay, and Jeff?
Not often discussed, but looming large are China and Russia. How big a threat influence are they in that zone?
Okay. That's a big one. How big is the threat of China and Russia? A question about if Israelis actually feel that they're really getting U.S. support. Did I get that right? If it's all talk or if it's real. Personal attack on my apartment and public relations. Okay. All right. So my response about the public relations thing is that a lot of people feel that Israel has not been doing a good job at PR. I say that Israel hasn't been doing a great job at PR for about 3,500 years. I went to school at the Department of Communications at SUNY Oswego. Maybe if I had been like a neighbor of Sarah and Avraham in the 10s, like back then, I could have taken a course and I could have been like, hey guys, let's like start now. My response is that Israel, for the good of the bad, is always working on defense, and something that Donald Trump said during his speech, which I actually think is super spot on, is he said that he hoped that peace was going to allow Israel to do the kind of work that so many brilliant minds in Israel could do if they weren't out to war, if they weren't walking around with a gun on their waist, waiting for an attack. It's a responsibility to have a gun. It's like my friends that carry guns, they say that it clouds their ability to think and behave on a day-to-day because they're aware of it. And I think that's a great metaphor. People can't be professing poetry when they are packing and they're walking around. They're walking around with a gun on their waist, and that's just so metaphoric of what's happening. So regarding PR, listen, I'm going to be honest. I don't think that we have a better orator than Bibi Netanyahu. I'm not talking about our political alignment. Yeah, have you been in an audience with him? Have you sat in front of Netanyahu and heard him speak? He's very compelling. He comes with his notes. He's really a gifted orator. So I'm not saying what my opinion on his policies are, but I'm saying we have somebody who's at the UN General Assembly with pictures of the Natanz nuclear facility in Iran, pointing at stuff, saying this is what we have to do, and people still don't get it. So my feeling about the PR stuff is very Israeli for you. It's like, we need to survive. We need to live. maybe we could figure out and here's the alternate. So you say Hamas got what they want because they are masters at PR or they've figured out their communication campaign, because they don't care if anyone dies. They don't care if the entire Gaza Strip is blown up as long as their hatred for Jews has become globalized the Intifada. So my response about the PR is, let's just support Israel because there's so much anti-Semitism in the world. And instead of attacking Israel for not doing a great job in PR, which I don't even know, and I'm a communication expert, I don't even really know what new statements can be made. What can be said to make everybody, we said it, we have to do this, and we have to do that, and this one died, and this Palestinian climbed into the window of this family and murdered the mom and the grandmother at the table on Shabbat. It's people that are trying to live. So I think that PR has gone to the side, but I also don't even really honestly know as a PR professional what campaigns, because if you think about it, we're such a small population, so if you have 10 Israeli social media influencers or 10 American Jewish influencers on social media that are speaking out, it's really good. It's really not in the same proportion as having an entire global community, and in every culture within that global community are people that hate Jews. How are you gonna succeed over that? So that's my response to that. About how it changed me personally, I just want to shift that question a little bit because I don't know yet. My apartment was hit on June 16th. I'm not over it. It was very hard for me actually when I got into my new apartment, more than when I was dealing with running on the hamster wheel of trying to figure things out with the authorities or find a new apartment. It was I had all this stuff to do. And then I got into my apartment and I sat on my couch alone. And I didn't know, what am I supposed to feel? How am I supposed to be? What does that look like now? And I think that moment is what Israelis are feeling in Israel right now after so much adrenaline for 2 years of having you have these little thoughts in your mind, let me make sure that my phone is charged, because if we get a siren at 4 o'clock in the morning and my phone is on 10% and I can't get out of my safe room, so you have all these little thoughts all the time. And that's what it is when you're an Israeli also. So you have all these thoughts. Or you have a thought maybe I should get 2 more cans because, God forbid, Iran strikes us again and I'm not going to be able to leave the house, so maybe I should have 2 more canned goods. And these are little things that are running in the back of your mind all the time. I started bringing my wallet and my phone with me to synagogue on Saturday mornings in the last 2 years. I don't want to do that. It doesn't feel like Shabbat to me when I do that, but I have to do it. And in the back of my mind, when I'm about to walk out of the house, should I bring it? Should I not bring it? What if Iran attacks us in a surprise attack? What if the IDF can't give us enough advance warning and then I'm at synagogue and I don't have my passport on me? These are all and it's so back of mind because we're living life. Thankfully, we're living life because the IDF has made it possible for Israelis to have some semblance of normal, for there to be stores that can be opened, and so anyone that says, it's not fair for Israelis to be living and have food and be able to go out to bars and restaurants and look what's happening in Gaza, there's a reason for that, because we've been working on this since 1948, when we had since before 1948, when we had the underground Haganah, and we had Holocaust survivors rising up from the ashes, slapping a gun on themselves and saying, I'm joining the new underground forces in Israel. We've been working on this since 1948 so that we could arrive at a moment where people could go to the store during wartime and get back to their house safely. Building the Arrow missile defense system. These are all precautions that Israelis have taken so that when we got to this moment, people would be able to do it. So my response about the trauma, I'm still in it. I don't really know how to respond. I feel like a shell of myself. I have had a lot of trouble connecting to myself. I have a hard time praying in the morning. and Israelis are not out of the weeds yet because we've been running around on adrenaline for 2 years, and now we're here, and my colleagues and friends don't know how to act. We don't know if to be happy. We don't know if to be sad. And a lot of, economic issues could arise. I don't want to be the one to say this, but if you look at global dynamics, you look at countries that go through war, there's a boom, there's a baby boom, there's economy, and there's a down after that. People that are thinking about that, there's no one knows where they're at right now. So that's my answer to that. In regards to the Israeli government, and to the Israeli people responding to the U.S. government and how they feel, I actually would say from people that I spoke with, when President Biden came to Israel, there were a few moments. First of all, I was on the tarmac for President Biden when he landed, just about 2 years ago, and he did come out to support Israelis. And one thing that I really enjoyed from the book that I read about him by Jake Tapper, the ABC anchor, he wrote a really excellent book about him. My favorite part about the book was learning about how many people were touched by Joe Biden's humanity, and that Joe Biden just went through so many personal disasters and had so many life problems that created him to be a very human, warm, feeling, understanding guy. And I actually think that it's pretty impressive for individuals in the United States of America to say, I heard from Joe Biden. Joe Biden came to my church, he gave me a hug. And I don't know if you remember this image, but there was an image of Joe Biden hugging a bunch of Nova survivors and people from the kibbutzim that survived October 7th, and there's this photo of him hugging them. And I saw it and I cried. Because Bibi Netanyahu did not give out any hugs. I understand why. He was jumping into the war cabinet, he was assembling his war cabinet, he was doing what he needed to do. But a lot of people in Israel were very touched by Joe Biden's warm words. I have a friend who calls it a Joe Biden don't. Do you remember when Joe Biden looked into the camera and he said, to any of Israel's enemies, if you're thinking about attacking, don't. So sometimes I ask my friend, I say, you want to go out tonight? She says, that's going to be a Joe Biden don't. No, I'm not going to do it. So people were affected by Joe Biden's words. I think people said to me, okay, well, those were nice words by Joe Biden, but let's see what he actually does. And then Joe Biden sent over some carriers off the coast, and people appreciated that. Israelis are very enthusiastic about Trump. I'm just going to be very honest. I know that he's a divisive figure. I know that many of us would not appreciate for our sons or husbands to behave like him. But people in Israel feel very grateful for him. They're talking about it. They have signs. But really, it's a savior complex, which I think is difficult because it's never been good for the Jewish people in the Kingdom of Judea or now to need any kind of outside occupying force to come in and save us. It's been very, very bad for the Jewish people when we've needed an outside force to come in and help. But people are grateful for it. They're talking about it in the streets. They feel relieved. Listen, I went 12 days with a war with Iran where every day 2 missiles were not being intercepted and were hitting down and destroying communities and people were dying. How do you think I felt when Trump ended it with Iran and struck up some kind of arrangement to stop those missiles from coming in? It was a life or death situation. I was very grateful, I was very glad, and I was very relieved because I understood that if that continued, Israel would have been done. Israel would have been done. Guys, you don't understand what it looked like. I mean, you can look, I have tons of pictures on my platform. And I think you had a question about China and Russia.
How much of a threat are they? I mean,
How much of a threat are China and Russia?
They have a lot of interest in, a lot of people say, well, they are, the Russians certainly propping up Iran militarily, economically.
I'm not an expert in this topic. I'm definitely reading the international news and I'm definitely up to date on what's going on, and I certainly think that it's very scary that Russia is trying to reinstate, a new version of the USSR. I think it's scary that China is infiltrating the minds of youth and individuals all over the globe by through TikTok or through online platforms that they don't let their own people consume, because they know how dangerous it is to insert messages into the minds of people. I would say the fear, first of all, something that I don't exactly know how to feel about is that Israel has a lot of business ties with China. I just want to say this as an Israeli, like there's a lot of Chinese business in Israel, and there's a lot of business connections between Israel and China, and we have a lot of Chinese workers. Our railroad is being built by Chinese workers. And a very wealthy Chinese businessman purchased the Haifa port, which alarmed Israelis that were paying attention. So I don't really have a very tight answer on what you're saying, but I can say that one thing I think Americans don't know is that there's a lot of business relationship between Israel and China, for the good or for the bad, I don't know. But that exists, and I just think a lot of Americans don't realize that. Should we finish?
So I think we're going to, first of all, I want to say thank you. You are absolutely, I was wowed by her the second I met her at UB, but even more so this evening, and I follow you, so thank you. I can say on behalf of our congregation, we continue to pray for peace, for Israel, for the people. We pray for the hostages, the deceased hostages to come home. We are waiting for our American boy, Omer, who's 10 minutes from this synagogue.
Yes.
We'll pray for everyone, but for us to all see peace, and I'm so high once again. We do have refreshments, and I guess your Uber will be here in, 15 minutes?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can go and get something to drink, eat something, if somebody wants to come up, but really, look her up, follow her. She is a wealth of information. Honestly, I hate to say it, don't go on to CNN, don't go on to Fox News, because that's, to answer your question, Gary, that's where in my opinion, that's where a lot of this is coming from. Follow her. There's some really good Israeli channels that you can get the facts, and it is factual. It is not made up. So on behalf of our congregation, thank you for everything. Our president has some announcements.
Really quickly, I want to say once again, thank you. It's a pleasure meeting you.
Thank you, everyone.
And thank you for coming, and boy, were you inspiring, and I wish more people came tonight. But we will send out a video to the congregation and let the
And it's there
congregation
for
see and watch and know what's going on, especially our young people. We really want to know. And thank you, Rabbi Deborah, for getting this program together. We appreciate all your hard work. So please keep on going. We'll definitely approve them. No problem. And Rabbi David, thank you for everything you do for us. And most importantly, thank you to your parents for coming tonight. We really appreciate having them. And they can join us anytime they want to.